Welcome to the NCIA's Voice of Cannabis podcast. Join host Jimmy Young as he dives into the pulse of the cannabis industry, featuring weekly guests who break down big topics like standardization, evolving regulations, and exclusive member spotlights. Get informed, get inspired. And now, here's your host, Jimmy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the NCIA's Voice of Cannabis podcast. I'm Jimmy Young. Support from the industry is so important for all content creators and organizations like the NCIA. It's why we so appreciate the support we get from Bud's Group of consultants in the tri-state area around New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. They do accounting, compliance, financial advice, and it all revolves around this amazing plant medicine we call a lot of things, but we refer to it as cannabis sativa, since after all, that's the name of the plant. We also want to thank the Maverick PR Group out of Colorado. And speaking of Colorado, that's where our guest this week has spent most of her professional life. Her name is Jen Lamboy from Hybrid Marketing, but she's so much more than just a marketing expert. She is a strategist and also one of the key members of the NCIA's marketing committee. So Jen, define what a strategist is and how it differentiates itself from just plain old marketing.
Ooh, I like that question. A strategist will map out the plan to get you from point A to B. Really in a strategic. I like how you air quote that one because that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But really, what we're talking about is setting a goal, mapping out how to get to that goal, and then at the end of it, testing whether or not we actually succeeded, and if we didn't, where did we stray off course? So we need to pivot because there were external factors. What is that? We look at the full picture, and it's a never ending. Well, my job is never ending, to be honest, because especially in this industry, like I said, external factors are changing all the time. Price compression is nailing our retailers. Our brands are also feeling the impact of that. Folks who are new to the industry, opening up operations with green stars in their eyes, haven't quite been given the smackdown of how this industry actually works. So strategy is something that I think every organization should be leaning into first. It really is the starting point from which you then apply the tactics to accomplish the goal that you set out to achieve.
So is it really like a business plan more than anything else when you create strategies? So you say, here's kind of where we'll be in 90 days. Here's where we'll be in 180 days. Here where we'd like to be in you get what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So a business plan, I think sometimes can be one of those things that shouldn't necessarily pivot as much as your strategy does. So when you launch a business or you're new to a new existing organization, there should be a business plan in place that really goes through who you are, why you exist, really at the end of the day where you're going, but not in year one or not in year three, but kind of this long-term game. Those, like I said, those plans tend to be fairly static. They should be fairly static because when they're not, and the shiny thing gets dangled in front of you, if you're making large sweeps in your business plan, you're really kind of going to get caught in a back current versus going forward. Where the strategy, it can be anywhere from a quarter to 6 months to a 3-year strategy. So that there should be flexibility built into the strategy because you just don't know once you dig into that path how the rocks and sticks and roots are going to get in your way.
Well, there's certainly no more challenging industry than the cannabis sativa industry because of all the regulations. And now we actually have 3 separate entities with the same plant. And this is one of the things that a lot of people have noticed and are talking about. Steve and Andrew D'Angelo have created the One Plant Alliance because you have a legacy market, you have a hemp market that is getting beat up at the federal level and is being threatened with a ban. And then you've got the legal cannabis industry that is trying to do everything the right way. But needless to say, a lot of people who are trying to do it the right way end up, having to go out of business because it is so over-compliant, over-regulated, overtaxed. It's unfair. And even the president of the United States recognizes it has medicinal value now. And he's ready to extract a one cannabinoid out of the 130 of using CBD and getting it to us old folks in the senior world so that we can deal with all the aches and pains that we have. Have there ever been an industry about one plant that has this many little niches and little pockets of challenges, if you will?
I mean, if you think about the agriculture world, this is in the timeline of farming. This is a new crop.
Hmm.
Even though we feel like it's been around, we feel like our industry is bigger than it actually is. But we are talking about a new crop, and I'm not referring to the hemp that George Washington was growing. I'm talking about SOPs are new, restrictions and yeah, interstate, travel and things like that, or
Right.
transport, sorry, is
Yep.
very different. So how we view the plant here in the United States versus in Europe, emerging markets, so it is a different crop than what we are used to. It's not corn, it's not sugar cane. So I think in those terms, we could consider it something that hasn't really been yeah, how do you say that?
Has it
Something that we haven't
matured?
quite dealt with quite yet.
Right. Yeah, but and again, it's a very complicated plant. If anybody's ever tried to grow this plant, okay, they know some of the complications that can happen. And even if you're a professional grower, sometimes you can get tainted soil. You can have the wrong mixture of a pesticide. And I mean, there's so many elements that you have to avoid just to bring a product to market.
Sure.
And again, so I'm guessing, you told me before we started recording that you're kind of segueing out of the marketing side and onto more strategy and business development side, yet they all kind of go hand in hand, don't they?
Sure, absolutely. And the reason for that, so hybrid was born of the idea of a business consultancy. How we monetize is through marketing. What we've learned in recent months is that we want to go back to our roots, because oftentimes organizations come to us and think that marketing is the thing that's going to change revenue. It's the silver bullet. And when we dig a little bit deeper, there's so much more to that narrative. I at the very least want to know, what does your sales pipeline management look like? If I bring you, 40 qualified leads, what are you going to do with those leads? And what is that? What is your sales cycle? I want to at least know that. But underneath that, I also want to dig into a little bit more on the executive level of, what are the obstacles getting in the way of that path to revenue? Because I can guarantee 99% of the time it's not marketing. So it's viewed as a commodity, to be honest, especially in the day of AI. And so we want to really get to the root of how we can help grow these organizations. And that's what we've done all these years. That's what I did when I had my own business. And certainly the reason that my founder pulled me into hybrid was specifically to grow this thing.
Very cool. And how is business?
I've I've got a seatbelt on that you can't see.
Just in case.
Roller
Okay. All right. That's good.
roller coaster is in yeah,
Yeah,
full loop to loop. Business is good. It is part of the reason, this industry is interesting. We've got two sides of our organization. One is cannabis, that's hybrid. The other is 4B, which is wine and spirits, also Rocky, tech. So we tend to dip into the industries that give us the most heartache, I think, and I would say at the end of the day, challenge. But in highly regulated spaces, once you're in the thick of it, I think you tend to really navigate business in that way. So that's why I think sometimes I hear folks all the time say, I don't want to get pigeonholed in cannabis. But I think if you work in this industry, or at least in a highly regulated industry, you're used to needing to be creative, resilient, look for the pivot. To be honest, I think you could thrive in any industry if your roots are cannabis.
absolutely. Adapt and improvise is the name of the game with this industry more than anything else, because every state has different rules. The feds have different rules and regulations. The feds are doing all sorts of things. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I mean, I'm reporting, excuse me, more on rumors and things they've heard than actual movement and at the federal level. That's
Right.
really what and we have no I have no choice. You are based in Colorado, however, which is really what I would consider to be a mature cannabis market, and yet you still have issues in that state with various regulations. I think I read recently there was a huge recall in the state, right? I mean, of millions of dollars of product.
Yeah. Yeah, we struggle to get things right as a state. You think about hemp beverage where the dosage caps are 1.75 milligrams. So you're going to pay, 20, $25 for a four pack that's going to
Mhm.
deliver less than 8 milligrams. And then you've got, we can't quite figure out delivery price compression as I would say almost second to none in any other industry, and not in a good way. We see dispensaries operate at a 22% loss. Some of our clients are operating at a 4% loss, and they consider that a win.
Win.
I just think,
Absolutely.
yeah, barfo.
Lose less before you
Lose,
make more. How's
lose
that?
that. Yeah, I feel like the biggest analogy to this industry is I don't know if you've ever gone water skiing, but if
Not
you
my body.
fall you've never gone?
Not with my body. No, no, no.
No.
I've been in a water ski boat watching others water ski.
Yeah.
How's that?
Here's
Okay.
the trick. Women are really good at it, I will say, because I think because our center of gravity is lower. I'm going on a tangent here.
Yeah.
Um, well, at least, yeah, that's what else that has been my experience of it. But what you quickly learn with water skiing is if you can pop up, you'll eventually fall, sometimes sooner than later. And the biggest lesson is if you don't let go of that rope, you're going to get slapped in the face with water for however long you're going to hang on. So I think in cannabis, there's a equal action here. It's like you've got to learn when too much is too much and it's not sustainable, and you're really threatening the growth and existence of your organization. And sometimes I don't think we do that well as an industry.
And yet, the mantra of the American Cannabis Nurses Association is start low and go slow. And yet the industry is forced to start low and go slow because of the compliance issues. But that also goes to the self-medication that goes on with anyone who uses this product. And I'm talking about adults over 21. One of the things that I've been harping on over the last few months when I talk to people that have been in this industry longer than me is the word recreational.
Mhm.
Has it done more harm than good when it comes to this industry? Because to me, if you really want to accept something that has medicinal benefits to it, you shouldn't be using it recreationally. You should be using it intelligently. And that means actually taking the time to learn about the plant, how it works with your body, your brain, and all this, and then start going low because everybody still walks into a dispensary, at least they do in the areas that where I've been. That includes Nevada and that includes the New England area, New Jersey, New York. And basically it's how much THC is in this product. I just want to buy the highest THC percentage.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and they don't understand how terpenes work in conjunction with the cannabinoids. It's not like getting a pack of Ritz crackers and having Ritz crackers. You know what you're going to get if you buy Ritz crackers, right? And it's consistent. Well, you'll never get a consistent approach with cannabis until you're someone who's practiced it or learned enough about what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
I think we vastly avoid the word intoxicant. Because no one's buying Ritz crackers to have like a super sweet time. It's
Exactly.
usually you're vomiting, and
Yes. Right.
at least that's why I was ever given Ritz crackers.
Yeah.
So I think if we get real about it, this is an ingredient. It really is. It's part of a larger CPG universe. But
Mhm.
for some reason, we're afraid to just say what it is. And this is outside of the Charlotte Webbs and the Ajnas of the world who are kind of moving a different needle, I think, kind of more specific to, of course, like CBD,
Mhm.
and the medicinal benefits of it. But we forget. I see it more so in the hemp beverage space. It's we're sometimes afraid to say it's an intoxicant, and you will get high, and that's why are we hiding from that? That's we don't say that with a when you order a glass of wine.
Right. Right. We don't say, I'm having this glass of wine because it's the beginning of six more glasses I'm going to have to get drunk. Okay, now there's certain times I'm not telling that I'm not that naive. I know there are people out there who actually go out drinking to get drunk. And at some point in my life, I know that was part of my MO back in the day when the drinking age was 18. Needless to say, I did not take my first drink at age 18. Okay, I'll be perfectly honest about that. And it's probably one of the reasons why I have enjoyed cannabis for most of my life because I don't get sick from it like I did with 3 beers and then find out later in my life that I'm allergic to hops and beer. No wonder I got sick when I was 15 and 16 and people, my friends were all making fun of me because I couldn't hold my beer. And I'm like, well, had I known I was allergic to hops, at least I'd have a good excuse for getting sick. But um, it's there's so much knowledge that has to go into this product. And I think that's one of the things that people are still wary about. And I'll never forget a lesson I learned from a guy. I'll give him a plug. John Dvorak. He has his mobile hemp museum in Massachusetts. And I'll never forget. I said, well, I think I made a comment about CBD versus THC, and one was non-psychoactive. And he goes, no, CBD is psychoactive. It's non-intoxicating.
Mhm.
And he was 100% right. He goes, that's the THC component that is the intoxicating cannabinoid in the plant. It was a great lesson to learn in the first year that I'm
Yeah,
out covering this thing and learning about it.
right.
But again, it's lost on our regular users because I just don't think people take the time to learn, to watch interviews and read medical journals. And there's been, you know how the government keeps saying, well, we need to study it more. There's been thousands of studies done on this plant. Okay. Now, whether or not you believe that the studies that are out there are true clinical trials or not, uh, and again, these days you're seeing more anti-cannabis movement than anything else. They look at the same set of results and spin them for their narrative. And I know you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
So, more importantly, how do we educate people about these various nuances of this plant? And we can't do public service announcements. That's half the
Yeah.
problem.
I don't, I mean, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit
Good.
here. I don't think,
It
I
makes for
don't think
good
that,
radio.
yeah, I don't necessarily think that education, um, how am I going to say this and sound accurate in my thinking? I think it's the thing that a lot of organizations think that we need, but we forget about the consumer. If it's not relevant to the consumer, why are we pushing this effort forward? There is an audience of folks who do want to know the medicinal benefits. They do want to dig into
Mhm,
all of the medical research.
mhm,
There's a large group of people who are just looking for maybe an alternative to alcohol, or they enjoy getting high, or they're California sober, or whatever, whatever those yeah, whatever folks are into now. And so I think the education piece is something that, eh, you know, the echo chamber that is the cannabis industry keeps promoting. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think that folks care. And so yes, you want to know. I think if we're talking about how is 5 milligrams going to impact me differently than 20 milligrams, it's kind of
mhm.
it's hard to tell someone that's a trial and error situation, and you won't know until you take too much, and then you're like, okay, that was clearly not for me. But I do think when you ask folks about terpenes, I don't know that if the world had an elevated knowledge of terpenes, that our industry would be any different.
Interesting. Now that's an interesting spin. And I appreciate the fact you're willing to disagree with me on that because I've learned certain things from nurse practitioners, from nurses, from researchers, from doctors, and all about the endocannabinoid system. I do want to ask you a question about that. The first public service announcement that I've seen that has been shared on the internet openly and certainly not banned was the PSA that the Commonwealth Project uh, put out there on September 29th. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was an explanation of what the endocannabinoid system is. It was also very much uh, skewed towards what President Trump has done, i.e., the Farm Bill in 2018, when we gave it a federal legalization definition, was under his first, and he wanted to take credit for that because he believes that CBD can help the seniors and
Yeah.
help with inflammation and all that. So that was the spin on this, but it was really well produced. It was graphically explained how the endocannabinoid system interacts with all the other systems in our cardiovascular, musculoskeletal, the whole nine yards, and and it made its way into
Yeah.
not even mainstream America. It made it into my mainstream because I basically saw that and said, "Oh my God, this is the first time I've seen a public service announcement explaining what this is." And it was really designed. You've probably never heard of the endocannabinoid system. So it really wasn't targeting the cannabis industry. It was targeting the people that are just kind of curious.
Right.
And that is it. And you know that the over 50s are the fastest growing group to market to because they're inquisitive. They're trying to find out different ways,
Sure.
and they may not want to smoke it, which goes back to the stat. 50% of the users on a daily basis are still using it and smoking it, or heating it up and vaping it, or whatever. The other half are using edibles and tinctures and all these different things that you can have the same effect. But again, it goes back to your metabolism, how it's going to interact with the chemicals that you're putting into your system.
Well, so
There's
I'm
no,
gonna
there's no
not.
question there, Jen. It's
Yeah.
just me
Yeah.
being, just
I,
ranting a little bit.
yeah, well, I'm thinking that, there's different facets of the education conversation. I think in that context, when we're talking about consumers who are revisiting cannabis after decades or whatever that looks like,
The
I do
baby boomers,
I
the
do
baby
think
boomers.
there is
Yeah.
I do think there is an education play because the weed that was smoked 40 years ago is quite different than what folks get their hands on now. And the form factors are different. So
Mhm.
yes, in that way, I think when we dig into the conversation around terpenes, that's where I sort of say I'm not really sure that level of education is necessary.
Okay.
Because I mean, you think about the alcohol world, we have sommeliers, we have folks that is their world, and there's wine enthusiasts. Those folks, I think, like they kind of want to geek out on it. As far as when we're talking about the endocannabinoid system, and what's available, that the education piece that does pertain, and that is important to anything that you're going to consume. If you're unfamiliar with it or you're revisiting, it's the same thing as, I'm not going to just go buy Ozempic and be like, I'm going to try this and see what happens. You know what
Right.
I mean? So
Yeah.
I
And,
wouldn't try
and
that, but
no, 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 no. And look, it's great that you understand the buying experience, the using experience. You understand that it isn't just, again, it's not Ritz crackers. You can't, it's an inconsistent plant that's a living thing. And it's going to impact people differently because everybody has a different endocannabinoid system and everybody has a different metabolism and everybody has a different tolerance. And,
Mhm.
back in the 70s, you're right, the weed wasn't very good. And I say this all the time to bud tenders when it's a sativa and I'm like, stop with that crap. I don't need that crap. That's not does it get you high on one hit, two hits, three hits? And if I don't feel anything in that fourth hit, I'm done. I don't need to smoke anymore. If it was one hit weed, it was Acapulco Gold. It was Colombian Red. It was Panama Red. That was the 70s. And maybe the early 80s too. But still, the point is it has changed so much now and it is more scientific, right?
Sure.
You have to
Absolutely.
almost be a chemist to understand how it all interacts with your CB1 and your CB2 receptors in your mind. And by the way, the more you know about it, the more adamant I am about making sure it's an adult 21 or to me, adult plus 18 product. You know,
Sure.
and
Absolutely.
isn't that what happened with hemp more than anything else? They basically let the whole thing go and figured, oh, well, kids aren't going to be able to get high from 0.3% THC. And I was like, are you nuts? I said, human behavior, they're going to figure it out. And
Yeah.
the first time I ever took a Delta 8 tincture, I couldn't believe how high I got.
Yeah. I think somewhere along the way we forgot the notion of consumer safety and dollar signs and eyes, you know.
Let's
There's
point
I
the
mean every industry has opportunists, of course, and I think, those who are peddling the 1,000 milligram gummy I don't think they were ever really thinking like, how's this going to impact the youth of America?
Right, but every
Or
one of
maybe
our
they were.
elected officials, every one of our elected officials uses that same line. What about the kids? We're going to keep it up. And yet it was our elected officials who were so ignorant with that Farm Bill of 2018. They didn't realize that they were actually giving a federal definition to legalization of the cannabis plant.
Yes, yes. And I think the evolution of hemp into an intoxicant was evolving because of the imbalance of supply and demand. So this industry is like water, and it is going to find its way in the same way that people will find a way to get high. It's just how it is. You can put the bans, you can close the borders, you can do all those things. But people that is human nature. It's not even human nature, it's animal nature to
We're
live
animals.
intoxicants.
We're
And
supposed to be,
yeah, and
we're
so
supposed to be intelligent animals, by the way. Some of
we're-
us are more intelligent than others as far as being in the animal kingdom. All right.
yeah.
Anyway, so question for you. This is pretty heavy question. I think I shared this at the end. Everybody thinks this move, if and when it ever happens from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which even at that level, I'm like, the government has recognized they made a mistake with the Controlled Substances Act by putting it in Schedule 1. Okay, that to me is a huge thing because advocates have been looking and getting it off that Schedule 1 for 40 years, 50 years since it existed. And now, because you and I both know money dictates a lot of things that happen in Washington, D.C., you've got big pharma, you've got big alcohol, right? You have a little big cannabis, if you will, if we want to include the MSOs that continue to expand outside of the country into international waters because it's so difficult to get anything done here in America when it comes to our political system right now. Who is going to emerge that's going to acquire this fledgling, not even adolescent, they're a toddler stage of cannabis in this country. Is it going to be big pharma? Is it going to be big alcohol? Does big alcohol finally see them not as a threat, but more as can we get our way in here, regulate it like alcohol, and help bring this into society? I don't know. What's your feeling about which one of these is going to emerge?
I think I'm just going to categorize them as the big boys. I think the big boys are gonna come in, and it's going to be a few different flavors of what you just said. So it's
Okay.
big pharma, yes. I think what happens that we don't discuss as an industry is when when federal legalization, if and when that happens, how is it going to change the industry that we have so lovingly and painstakingly grown. So that's where I'll say the education piece is most important. Not
Mhm.
so much, and I say that because the general public does not understand. I mean, even if you go on the Hill and you talk to the staffers and the representatives and those in the Senate, they don't fully understand the industry in terms of like the scope of restrictions and how this is really kind of almost criminally taxed in
I,
many. And so I
oh,
think the education piece is more on the again the regulation side. If
mhm.
more of the American public understood how this actually is playing out, then
Right.
I think that opens the door up to a very mature conversation. And
Mhm.
to answer your question, the wine and spirits world, they're already looking there. I mean, they're
They're in it.
shriveling in some ways. Yeah. And I mean, I think as an industry, again, we should be we're fighting toward federal legalization, but how is it going to look
Right.
if and when that happens? I feel like it's going to change things significantly.
Oh, absolutely could. Imagine if it wasn't banned back in the 1920s and 30s, um, how our industry would look differently if hemp was used as a much more environmentally friendly tool to build with. That drove the needle to prohibition because it still comes down to the almighty dollar.
Sure.
Everything in our country comes down to this almighty dollar. And Lord knows, Jen, people like you, because we can talk at a level that, again, I think you're extremely knowledgeable. You've been around it long enough. I've been around it long enough, and I know that there are no cut and dry answers. It's going to take time for all of this to evolve and get more and more accepted because I'm still dealing with the stigma on a daily basis. I'm sure you are too.
Sure. Yeah,
You're in the
absolutely.
cannabis industry? How many times, right? I mean, really? It's like, yeah, really. Anyway, Jen Lamboy, I mean, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, and I do appreciate you taking the time out to do this. Is there one thing in particular that you want to share with the public that you think is really important to grow and accept where we're at as an industry?
Sure. I always talk about business maturity. I think what happens to us as an industry, like I said, is we get kind of caught in this echo chamber that is this very small space, and we listen to ourselves and or a small number of people who have big voices. But if you look at the full landscape, if you look at the full landscape, look at what's happening around us, look at those clues of what does the future hold for us when we think about Miracle Grow selling the cannabis arm,
Right,
Hawthorne.
that's in our news. That's one of our big stories this week. Yep.
Yeah. So there's clues out there when we talk about where is the industry going, and I think it is on us to really button things up, kind of put on our I hate to say the suits and ties, but our blouses, our more business mature attire,
Yeah.
so that we're coming to the table. Um, Again, even not only when we're lobbying, but when we're doing business with each other, when we're expanding into other industries, is that is the biggest differentiator, I think, between cannabis and other established industries. So if there's one thing that I'll keep pushing hard on is this bar that I'd like to continuously set higher, all in the name of business maturity, because I feel like that is going to be the future of this industry. That is going to be the thing that um, impacts us positively or negatively.
That's right.
I think the
And
NCIA is one of those organizations that is also feeling that getting the bumps and bruises as well. And it is a huge opportunity for the organization right now to leverage, the shining stars of the committee members and the committees and the everyone who's within this universe for us to kind of move out further into the space and say this is a larger conversation. Hey, hemp beverage folks. Hey, regulators, everybody, let's kind of join into this conversation, because where we're going is in some ways in our control, but it is all in the name of showing up a little bit more adult than we have.
well, growing up is still an adventure, even at my age. And I have kind of a Peter Pan thing. I never wanted to grow up in the first place, and here I am as a talk show host, just like I've been for 40 years. Um, you know what? I get a lot of, what the definition of insanity is: doing the same thing over and over and over again and not getting anywhere. And I'm like, I've gotten plenty of where, because when I go out now to MJ BizCon or whatever, and people come up to me and say, "Hey, keep up the good work. You're doing a great job. Keep, waving the flag." And I appreciate that. That means more to me than anything else in my life, because it's the only feedback I'm going to get. I do go on comments on YouTube, but I understand that part too. And it's another reason why I'm glad you threw in the plug for NCIA, because these types of groups need our help, just like cannabis media needs our help, just like what Rochelle Gordon said when she got the award for the Cannabis Journalist of the Year and waved the flag for all media. Support the local media that are covering this industry, because just like the lobbyists, we need help too, unless we go to a subscription model. And I want the public to have access to my content for as long as possible, because there's so much information in there, so much education, that as an educator, I want to share with others. And Jen, man, I love talking to you. I want to continue this conversation. I've got some questions certainly about our rebranding effort to WPCM TV, but we'll do that off air, as we used to say back in the day. So, Jen, best of luck to you in the future. I know you're kind of segueing from marketing over to strategy and consulting. And how do people find you? I mean, I found you on LinkedIn really fast. Didn't expect you to immediately come back at me with a message, but that was funny. Anyway, how do people
Yeah,
find you?
yeah. I mean, LinkedIn is probably the go-to. I travel significantly throughout the U.S. just to keep our lens on the industry as relevant as possible for our clients. So LinkedIn is the best way. On mountain trails, sometimes I run into my colleagues there here in Colorado, but I'm out and about, but I'm never too busy to sit down and have a real conversation about how we can move this forward.
There you go. She's Jen Lamboy. I'm Jimmy Young, and we appreciate you watching. And also remember to subscribe, like, and share to the NCIA's Voice of Cannabis podcast.
Your cannabis business could be overpaying by hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal income taxes because of one simple assumption that you're making about your accountant. A dispensary owner in Colorado called me frustrated as hell. He'd been working with the same accountant for 3 years. His accountant said, "What's 471C?" Here's what the ignorance of that accountant was costing this business owner: $180,000 every single year for 3 years. 471C has been around since 2017. We're talking about an 8-year-old tax provision that many cannabis CPAs don't fully understand. 471C is one of the most complex and highly debated tax strategies in the cannabis industry. If you want to make sure you're not leaving any money on the table, I'm offering free 471C reviews this month. Link in the description.
Accounting Buds has grown into Buds Group, the same award-winning quality, now with more service offerings. Buds Group, your best buds in the biz.
Looking for PR that over-delivers on expectations? At Maverick Public Relations, they pair big agency experience with personalized attention. From launching award-winning brands to securing top-tier media hits, their data-driven communications team helps visionary leaders and entrepreneurs rise above the media noise. Maverick PR is responsive, collaborative, and relentless about results and ROI. Visit themaverickpr.com and make headlines together.